Hey, everybody. I want to welcome you to Pro Mindset Podcast today. This is your host, Craig Doman, and I've got a former Kansas alum, Darrell Stuckey, football guy, who currently is the Director of Football Relations at the University of Kansas. Darrell, I want to thank you for being on Pro Mindset today.
I appreciate you having me, Craig. This means a lot. It's been a while since I've actually been on a podcast.
Okay, well, here's the thing, my man. You played the game in college. You're a Kansas City guy. You got drafted in the fourth round in 2010 by the Chargers. You played for 7 years. You were in camp for 8 years. Then you come back to your alma mater, and now you're making a meaningful impact on your alma mater, and the program's obviously moving in the right direction with Lance. I mean, he's got these guys rocking in the right direction. How exciting is it now to be back and to have the perspective you have today where you're in it? You're involved. You're connected to your head coach. You're a part of the program. And what kind of excitement is there around the program today that has kind of been lacking a handful of years ago?
There's a lot of excitement, and to be in the middle of it is a tremendous honor and opportunity for me to be intentional. I think it's one of the things that I've always been big on is not just being a part of my environment, but making my environment a part of me. Being intentional with the influence I have on the things I'm entrusted with and the amount of influence that I have been given. Because I think that being able to come back and do something about the feeling I had after I left and saw the program that a lot of us built, that we went 12-1 back-to-back bowl games, and then to see it fall so fast, and then see us have multiple head coaches over a short period of time that led to nothing when it comes to success on the field and seeing it. But those young men fought validly, and we didn't want that to go in vain. We wanted to make sure they understood that they were a part of this process, and they too will be part of that foundation to build this thing back the right way. So coming back with the right intentions and trying to pour back into a university, giving back, paying back my scholarship, and getting a Stuckey Family Football Scholarship to a kid that's from Kansas every year, having an opportunity to not just do that, but then to physically be a part of trying to build something the right way. And I came back initially just to minister to the team, just to help the spirit of the team, and then realizing that there was more that needed to be done. And I was limited in doing that from the outside, trying to come in and have limited access. That if I was on staff and I was actually there with the guys in it with them, that I would have more of an influence to create an environment for young men to thrive. And so that led to a lot of different things that we probably would discuss and cover throughout this thing. But one of them was it led to me having a direct impact on who was the next head coach of the University of Kansas. And
If I can interject, what is it about Lance that he's won everywhere he's went? He comes to Lawrence and he just wins. What is it about his character, his faith, his culture that allows him to recruit the right kids? He's got a fantastic staff and to put a great product on the field. When we've gone through a decade since your class left, where it was pretty ugly.
I would say all of it. Everything that he encompasses. He is a man who doesn't like to skip steps. He doesn't try to get somewhere faster. He has a way about him that enjoys the process, that understands that each layer we lay has a record, and that record sets the next foundation of stability. And so he's not someone who tries to cut corners. He is someone who's so realistic. He loves the validation and the validity of what the outside is saying and seeing, but he also doesn't allow it to dictate how he should feel about what's going on inside. And so if the expectations are high outside and internally, we're so realistic about it. We have the talent to be exceptional, but he's going to keep it realistic about the way in which we go about doing things, not just the way in which the talent is in the room, but how do we go about doing the little things? Because he knows that's what's going to carry us on when the things get hard, when the things get tough. He's intentional about the relationships we create within our program, within each other. He's intentional about people he brings into the program, because the biggest thing about him is alignment. And I haven't been around football as long as he has, but the alignment we have across campus, across our staff, and across anything that is surrounds that our program. It's something I've never seen before, from top to bottom.
So how does that perspective jive with young men who are always trying to take shortcuts? They're always looking for cheat codes.
Yeah.
They all want to jump to the front of the line. They want to be All-Americans before they even win the starting spot.
Oh, yeah.
That's just how young men think. That's how we thought when we were young men too.
Yeah.
So how does coaches' philosophy about don't skip steps, focus on the process, be intentional, and let's all be on the same page, how does that connect and relate to or land with 17 and 18, 19-year-old young men?
I think patience is a start, and grace, because, and first and foremost, you have to have a vision. You have to have a vision of what you're working towards, and that vision creates purpose and creates direction. Once you have that vision, that purpose, that direction, now you have to communicate it the right way. You have to communicate it the right way, but in the process of communicating, you have to identify those people who can carry that message the right way with integrity. I look at it a lot. I am a believer and I'm strong in my faith, and it's no different than what Jesus was sent here to do. It wasn't about him sharing his message to the masses. It's about him identifying people who he can entrust the message to share it to everyone else, and then they'll share it to somebody else. Because if the message wasn't shared, we wouldn't know what he did. We wouldn't know what he was here for. And it's the same way when it comes to being a leader or being a coach. You have to have a vision, and that vision creates purpose. It creates direction. Your ability to share that with your staff, to implement it into your staff, to task your staff, to evaluate and to assess and to develop your staff, and then entrust them to develop and share the message to their position groups, as well as you. Now you can focus on the mood and the perception of the entire body of the team. And as a coach, if you can't delegate and entrust, if the adults in the room aren't linked together, walking together with confidence and with joy, regardless of circumstances, it is impossible to get the young people in that same room to buy in, trust, and walk and link together, regardless of what happens on around them. If you got any naysayers in the room that are the adults that are on staff, they're going to pick at the integrity of the plan and of the whole entire thing. I mean, they say culture is what you allow. No matter what you do, culture is what you allow, and that becomes the habits. That becomes the culture of the people. That's why, as a parent, the little things you got to keep at and keep repeating them. Like if you have a son, we all know putting the toilet seat down is a big deal. Every single time they go to the bathroom, you have to remind, hey, just put the toilet seat down. Hey, just wash your hands. Hey, you turn off the light. Dry your hands off. Just use soap. Like you have to ask these things every single day. But when you allow yourself to become frustrated every time, now you're trying to force them instead of forge them to do it the right way. And so when you're forging your patience, like, hey, I don't know, let me smell your hands. I don't smell soap. And then so you give them cues of knowing that, hey, I see you. And when they do it, it's like, hey, great job. Hey, I appreciate you. Hey, yeah, come on. You can have some chips. You can put your hand in there. Go ahead. I know your hands are clean. And you reward them for the little things they do. With these small things, you allow them to see why these little things matter and why they add up. But you're creating new habits. So when you have a generation or have young people that don't like to do the little things, that like to get to the end, you have to get them to understand why it's important. You have to be able to help them build the habits outside of football. You have to have these small check-ins of accountability that helps them create these habits of responsibility and not seeing it as a burden, but seeing it as purpose. Hey, I'm going to get up. I'm going to go into the facility 45 minutes earlier than I need to be there. So I have time to change, have time to weigh in, have time to already continue my hydration, have time to make sure I ate something, to have time to make sure I can stretch and get warmed up before we have to do what we need to do, and to get my mind right instead of coming in 5 minutes before I have to be there. And you create these habits, these checklists that build them up to create a habit of, hey, if this is what you want to do and what you want to be, you're going to have to create a lifestyle that suits it, that fits it, and that allows you to be that. Because it doesn't matter how fruitful a plant is supposed to be. if it doesn't have a vertical structure that holds up that vine, there's no way it can get off the ground to actually bear the fruit it's supposed to have. So if you don't build up these vertical structures around talent, the talent won't be fruitful.
Amen. I see three concepts that all work together, and you talked about all three of them. One of them is you have to know your purpose before you can cast a vision.
Yeah.
Because if you don't know why you're here and what your talents and gifts are and what your purpose is, you can't cast a vision. Once
I
you
agree.
cast a vision for other people, now your process supports the vision. They
Yeah.
can be disciplined and accountable and all these things. And they can have willpower. They can do more than they thought they could do once they buy into the vision.
Yeah.
But you can't have vision without purpose. So it
I
starts.
totally agree. And I think I said it backwards earlier when I said that you have to have a vision, and that vision will give you purpose and direction. You're exactly right. You have to know what's in your hands first. You have to know what you're capable of and what your talents are and how you're meant to use them. And with that purpose, and some cases people do get the vision before they get the purpose sometimes. But before you can share with anybody, you have to know what your purpose is in that vision before you can share with anyone. You're exactly right.
Well, I talk about in Pro Mindset, you got to be able to plug into your purpose. And one of the ways you show your purpose is by establishing high standards. So like when you're representing players, they all complain about what their coach expects. And they're all looking for, hey, is 99% going to be enough? Hey, if I just do 99%, he won't notice the one.
Oh,
okay?
yeah.
Right?
No doubt.
And so you do that, like in the NFL, they have 14 days of installs. If you learn the playbook 99% every day, you don't know 14% of that playbook.
Yeah.
And you're going to get thrown in the preseason game and they're going to have a play call and you don't know what to do because it was one of the plays that you didn't learn. So one of the concepts that I talk about is the idea of elevate your standards above your coaches. So if every player in the locker room has a higher standard than his position coach, he doesn't have to worry about anything.
Yeah, because
coach wants you to be there.
Yeah.
Coach wants you to be there 5 minutes early. Your standards, you're going to be there 10.
Yeah.
If coach says, hey, we're going to do, strength coach says, hey, I want this, and you're going to do one more rep, you don't have to worry about cheating reps because you're not stopping at 10. You're going to 11. Thoughts
The reality
on that?
of it is if you, as a player, didn't want to make any mistakes, never wanted a missed assignment or a negative asterisk on your grade sheet, the coach is probably thinking, hey, as long as we minimize the mental errors and we grade out, we minimize the missed tackles, and we're realigning the right way, we're doing good. And as a player, I'm like, I don't want any mistakes. And I agree, I shouldn't have any mental errors because that's things that take no talent. I shouldn't have any lows because that's just effort. That's attitude and effort. Those things should never, ever have negative asterisks on it. I may be in position, attacking somebody the wrong way and miss a tackle here or there, but it shouldn't be a repetitive thing. And that coach may give me some leeway, but I may be angry about it, exactly like what you just said. And as a coach, you keep yourself realistic. You push them to maximize their full potential, but you're not trying to diminish the growth they've made. Whereas a player, if your expectations are higher, you're allowing yourself to maximize your potential and make sure you're pliable for that coach to elevate you as high as he can. But you're exactly right. If you don't have higher expectations than your coach, then you're only going to do the bare minimum. You're only going to do what's necessary. And here at KU, we actually do have 3 categories that we put up that our players measure themselves in. And it's relentless, consistent, and resistant. And it's easy to be resistant. It's so easy to be resistant. That could be you late to tutoring. That could be a missed supplement that you didn't take that you need to take for your health, for yourself. It could be a missed when I say supplement, it's a vitamin that you need for your nutrition. It's not something that we're saying that, hey, you need to take this supplement. No, it's like a vitamin. It's your vitamins that you need. If you are deficient in this vitamin or that vitamin, we're just holding you accountable to make sure you take what you need. And then the other side of that is consistent means you're doing the minimum. You're doing what you're supposed to do. You're doing what you don't expect of you. You're showing up on time. You're completing the workout but you're not bringing anybody with you. You're not holding anybody else accountable. You're not encouraging anybody along the way. You're only worried about you. So you are doing well. But with the relentless means you're uplifting the environment around you. You're bringing someone with you. You're holding others accountable. It's not just about you. Not only are you being consistently doing what you're supposed to, but you're pushing the culture. You're elevating the culture while you're doing what you're supposed to do. And that's what it's all about. And I think that there was a essay that W.B. Du Bois wrote that was called The Talented 10. And at the time, he was talking about 10%, or for every 10 African Americans, one person had the courage to motivate and elevate the other people around, the other 9 around them, to elevate the room, to elevate the race because of the hindrances that we had as African Americans. So every 10 people on a team, there was one person that was willing to do what it took to make sure they got everybody ready, got everybody the direction they needed, and made sure they had the resources they needed, and motivated them to complete the task, or led them to complete the task. It's the same way on the team. It's the same way in the locker room. If we got 120 guys on our team, we need a good 10, 12, a good 12 people minimum that are elevating that room, that are pushing the standard forward, that is not allowing their teammates to just go through the motions. And so you want to have more and more people that are willing to do that, but you have to have those 12 set the example, that are pouring into another 12. They have one each. That's going to make it more realistic and more tangible for them for the next group coming in to understand how you're supposed to do it the right way. And that's part of it, is taking ownership.
Okay. So let's we went down culture, we went down standards, we went down some of that stuff. Let's back up. And why don't you share with everybody your story? What is your story?
Where do I start? Oh man, born and raised in Kansas City, Kansas. As a kid who didn't play sports early on. I had febrile seizures, which basically means that your body generates heat in a way in which it cannot regulate it or calm down. So your body resets, hits reset, which causes you to convulse and go into a seizure because your body temperature is going too high. Things that can trigger it could be you hit your head, you're fighting off a virus, you're teething. It could be a numerous of things, but it usually happens to kids that are under 5 years old. I usually see it at 18 months where it starts usually. But what I didn't know is no kids ever died from it. They usually grow out of it around 5 or 6. But because of that early on, I didn't play contact sports till I was cleared. I got cleared at 6 because I didn't have any more seizures after that. And then now it's trying to ease into sports while allowing my body to regulate its own temperature. And so I started at about 9 playing some sports. I played flag football, got into football at 10, where I played for the Turner Bears in Kansas City. I got to make a game-winning tackle to win a championship in 5th grade, heavy. I was a kid who weighed about 85 pounds, and the minimum was 85 pounds to be on 5th grade heavy. I was at the McDonald's that morning, chugging orange juice and water and trying to eat the little burritos you used to get. And so I was a frail, small kid who my parents split up when I was like 4. Didn't think too much of it, just what life was. And it was inner city Kansas City. So I'll be honest, I didn't know truly the environment I was in. Growing up, I didn't think it was that bad. I thought it was normal. My mother did a phenomenal job at making sure we didn't want for anything, but we certainly didn't have everything. We had everything we needed, but not excessively what we wanted, if I say it that way. And she was a single parent mother for most of my childhood. I remarried when I was going into high school to a Marine who also was from Kansas City. And they actually got divorced 7 years later. Or I was going into middle school. They got divorced 7 years later. I was going into my senior year. And that was an ugly feat in itself. That was probably the most challenging part of my life because I was the middle child of 3. When my mother got remarried, he had 3, but then we adopted 3. So now the 3 he had were all older than me, and then the 3 we adopted were all younger than me. So I was like this super middle child. I was like this super middle child. There was like 4 kids on both sides of me, but I was the oldest in the house when I was going to my senior year. and they're in the process of getting divorced. And in this process, I decided I was going to leave practice 30 minutes early and go to work. And the only reason why I was able to do this because my coach trusted me, knew what was going on in my family. My stepfather was going to prison. I won't get into the whole details of why he went. It's something I think that my cousin, which was my adopted sister, because we adopted his nieces and nephews, is still healing from. But he goes to jail, and in that process, it puts a division in our family, and things go south. And I was leaving practice 30 minutes early my senior year to go to work to help pay for my expenses, the transition going to college. And I was able to, my high school football coach, who coaches now at Millwood in Oklahoma City, Coach Franklin, he was a young coach at the time. And because of the work I put in up to that point, he saw me since my freshman year. He knew that I wasn't going to put anything in jeopardy to help the team that year. And I had been there every single practice, every single day. And conditioning wasn't something that I was struggling with. And that was usually the last 30 minutes of practice was the conditioning part. And before that, though, before my senior year, I had went to an FCA camp going into my senior year. And it was a week before my birthday. And so it was June. So like a month ago in 2004, I went to FCA camp. And I grew up in the church. And that year it was I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one gets to the Father except through me. Was the verse of that year. And I was raised Pentecostal, so it was a lot of Holy Spirit slinging, a lot of dancing and praise dancing and worshiping. We go to here. I had never seen that many, let alone peers. We're at William Joe College. This is a leadership camp for FCA. So this isn't an emphasis in playing sports. This is an emphasis in developing you as a leader, as young leaders, in your sport and as a believer. And we're all teenagers. So 700, probably 400 or 500 kids. We're all at William Jewel, and we're all worshiping. I walk in that auditorium, and I'm just like, wait, they're all my age. Wait, they're all not only my age, but they're also all student athletes and all dominant in their sport. I go to this thing, and the craziest thing is I had turned down, so I was supposed to go to a KU camp, 3-day camp. They was heavily recruiting me. And I told Mangino I couldn't go to the 3-day camp. I said, Coach, well, not only could I not afford to go, but I also already committed to going to an FCA camp. And he's like, wait, what? I said, yeah, I already committed to going to an FCA camp. And at first he thought I was saying a different school. Then he realized, wait, FCA, that's a Christian organization. And I said, yes, sir, it's a leadership camp for fellowship Christian athletes. He goes, oh, I got you. Okay. So you're going to come the first day. And I said, yes, sir, I only can afford to come the first day. And I got a scholarship to go to the camp. As an inner city school kid, I was granted a scholarship to pay for the expenses of the camp by anonymous gift or whatever. And so I go, so I go to the camp, and that first day he's talking. He comes up to me and goes, I can't ever imitate him without not doing his voice, but he goes, hey, Stuck, back by popular demand. And he reassured me in that moment. He says, hey, you never can have too much leadership. I'm glad you came today, but I'm even happier that you're going to a leadership camp. And at that time, he had no idea what I was going through. And I'll get into what I was going through a little bit, but he had no idea what I was going through. And at the time, my stepfather had just went to prison. It was on the verge of going to prison. I was confused, and I had just found out 2 weeks before that. Actually, I'm sorry. He was saying that to me, but he had no idea what I was about to go through. I'm sorry, what I was about to go through, because all that doesn't happen until 2 weeks after that moment. And in that moment, I'm like, well, thanks, coach, whatever. And I go through the camp. I end up straining my hamstring because we ran a 40 a third time. And on that third time, I had ran the fastest time of the camp, and I was going against 2 other people that had a fast time. And I ended up winning it. But as I crossed the finish line, I strained my hamstring. I believe it was solely because I was playing baseball all summer, hadn't done anything football except go to like the morning workouts or whatever. My body was definitely in shape for baseball, which you ain't sprinting 40 yards full speed in baseball. You're going about 12 yards and then turning left, 12 yards and then and then decelerating to turn left. And I was a center fielder, and Yeah. So I strained my hamstring, and now I'm angry with God. And we're leading into, and I'm leaving this camp early. I was unable to participate the rest of that camp, and I was angry at God going to the FCA camp. And I was like, God, I put you first. I told him I wasn't going to stay all 3 days because I'm going to this FCA camp. You let me get hurt. Like, I was angry. And then I go to this FCA camp, and I walk in and see all these students being who they are in their faith, anchored. And in the process, we do this giant ladder. Like, William Jewell had this vertical obstacle course. And in this vertical obstacle course, the SWAT team use it, the different local reserves, like military reserves, use it. And now we get to do it. And me and this other competitive high school kid named John wanted to go in the Hall of Fame of the obstacle course. We're like, we can't beat these SWAT teams and these military dudes, so let's do something they haven't done yet. We decide to blindfold ourselves and to bound ourselves together, like by 5 foot slack. So we go up together, blindfolded, and you see two kids on the ground that are our guides. That are telling us where to place our hands, where to place our feet. And in that moment was the first time I ever really gave up control. It was the first time I ever took away a sense, like seeing, and had to fully commit to being led by somebody else. But not only being led, but in the dark and while still being responsible for somebody else. And in that moment, it was the clearest I've ever heard my inner voice or heard God's voice speak to me or spiritually. And just like the question was, how dare you? How dare you after all this time not trust me, but you don't even know the name of the person holding your life in their hands. As you're going up this vertical obstacle course, you have no idea who the person. And I don't even remember the kid's name who was my blayer, who was holding the rope as I was going up this. I think it's like 5-story obstacle course. I don't even remember their name. And yet I went up there full of faith, believing that they were going to keep me safe. And in that moment, I was like, I play a game that's aggressive, that's somebody could take a cheap shot and hurt me anytime. Never question it. But yeah, I can't fully give my all to God. And in that moment, I vowed to take responsibility for my life, for my faith, and who I was going to become in the process. And so going through that moment, I took ownership of my relationship, my spiritual relationship at that moment. That before that, my parents were taking me to church. My parents were telling me how to think. My parents were telling me how I should feel. And I'm going into my senior year, and I said, you know what, where I go, I'm going to be a positive light to the environment I'm in, and I'm going to influence it as such. And so I leave there, and that Friday, Mangino calls me, and he offers me a full ride. In spite of me getting hurt there, he offers me they saw enough to offer me a full ride to go to KU. And I looked at my mother, and I'm like, Mama, but all I did was run and do a couple of drills. And we committed then. This is in June before my senior year. And I committed right then. My mother was like, you sure? My stepfather was like, wait. But this is also during the time of like Maurice Claret. I don't know if I remember the whole. I was like, nobody can offer me more than a full ride. More than that, it's illegal. So I accepted that scholarship, and I told my coach, don't give any other coach. Back then, there was no social media. I think Facebook hadn't started yet. There was like Instant Messenger and Black Planet and phone calls. So like, I told my coach, I said, hey, coach, don't give any other school my number. I don't want to talk to anybody else. This is in June before my senior year. So I said, don't even tell me who calls. I'm going to KU. And so 2 weeks after that is when my father gets arrested. The whole trial starts to go to jail. And I decide that I talked to my coach, and he let me leave practice to go help my mother, help work. But in the process of that, I fall asleep behind the wheel, almost get in a car accident. So yeah, when you ask who I am a man. I'm a father. I'm a son. I'm a believer. But I am human. Grown so much. I wouldn't change any of my life for anything. And that snippet of the stories I've told is just a glimpse, but there's so many more. But that was an anchored one for me, because that anchors who I am. Because for you to achieve anything, you have to first understand who you are and be honest with yourself and take responsibility of your life. Now, everything you went through in your life isn't your fault. When you were young, you could control the environment you were raised in, but here we are now with whatever you have. what are you willing to do about it and do with it? Because I've been at leadership retreats with kids at Notre Dame. It's, even to get in that school, you have to be prestigious. So the reality of it is regardless of how any of those student athletes or students got in that school, they are granted the same opportunity once they get there. It doesn't matter whether it was privilege, whether it was you had to overcome the sacrifice or the obstacle yourself. You have to identify where the sacrifice was made and who made the sacrifice for you, or what you had to go through to overcome it. And what are you going to do about it now? But in the process, I had to learn what is going to hinder me going forward and what is going to amplify my life for me to go forward. What's going to help me. But I had to be honest with myself, and there was a lot of things I had to address about me and about my past for me to go forward and overcome and to maximize my full potential. So who am I? Yeah, there's a lot to that question. But I got 4 kids, beautiful wife, who we've been married now, 13 years, been together for about 15. We got married in 11. Both went to University of Kansas. We're Jayhawks through and through, both from Kansas. Her parents were teachers. Her brother also went to Kansas. My sister with Iowa State. So they're still Crimson. They're still in the Big 12, I guess. But she played basketball there, so we competed all the time. My sister are 11 months apart. So we're Irish twins. We're the same age for 3 weeks, which is always, growing up was the most miserable 3 weeks of my life because I couldn't tell her anything because we're the same age. My brother is about 4 years older than me. He was big in raising us. I like to think he sacrificed his own pursuits of sports and extracurricular activities to make sure we were okay. So it was a lot of opportunities for us in our life. And yeah, my father is doing well. He lives in Kansas City. I get to talk to him whenever I want to. And
well, let me jump in there for a second, Darrell.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're on the Pro Mindset podcast, and Pro Mindset is about really rewriting your story. And when you were in when you were at William Jewell, that was the start of you rewriting your story.
Yes.
You were
taking
no longer
ownership and taking responsibility.
Yeah, and you accepted Jesus, I'm guessing, at that time if you hadn't done it before. So the bottom line is so many people think they are the worst thing they did. So many people are stuck in a mistake that they made X years ago. And it impedes them from moving forward. And so in Pro Mindset, the number one thing is rewriting your story and letting go of the past, forgiving the people that harmed you, forgiving yourself for the dumb decisions that you made. I think just to bring some faith into this, Jesus gets murdered and he gets given up by his 12 closest friends. Several of them gave him up. And 3 days later, he's back walking on the planet, and he doesn't hold any grudges. He's not mad at anybody yet, but we can be mad for 5, 10, 15, 20 years at people. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So the thing that I think one of my missions is helping people rewrite their stories and understand that they are not who they thought they were. You just said, you're a man of God, you're a husband, you're a father, you have all these things. Football is just what people do when they're younger. It's not who they are. And I think a lot of guys in the NFL struggle with that. The way it manifests itself is not while they're playing. It's when they're done. They can't make the transition because football became who they were and they got it all mixed up. They got a little muddy. And instead of thinking, I'm a human being, not a human doer, football's what I do. And when my career's over, I'll move on and do something else. But there's just so much sex appeal about playing in the NFL. There's the money, there's the fame, there's just so much. It's the pinnacle of that profession. And so many people would love to do it that maybe don't have the athleticism of the guys that do it, or maybe the work ethic of the guys that do it, but it's still not who they are. Thoughts on that?
It's so easy to fall into the trap of believing that this is who I am. because it demands so much of you. For you to maximize your full potential of who you can become talent-wise in that sport while you're in it, it demands and consumes your life in such a way that everybody associated with you has to adjust their schedule and perspective on you to fit that. It becomes a lifestyle. So therefore, your life starts to schedule it around that as the priority. Whether it's going to church every Sunday, kind of changes if you play in the NFL. That's when you truly have to be able to grow and have a relationship with God, regardless of whether you can be there physically or not, and be able to get it in on a Saturday, and be able to get it in on during the week when you can through Bible studies and other sources. But the reality of it is it consumes so much of your time and your focus and your energy that you start to almost worship it in some sorts because you're honoring it so much, because you're giving it so much of you. And then when it's gone, it is hard to put your energy into something else that feels just as tangible or just as rewarding. When you get something like that, that gratifies you, that in some sorts glorifies you, in some sorts and pays you at that level, you won't replace that. You won't find something else to do. Even now, like it's so much harder for me to be patient when I'm not the product. So now working with student athletes where they're the growth, they're what I'm pouring into. I'm not in the weight room pouring into myself to go perform. It's trying to help them see their path, help them see what they put in their own way, in their own path. And so the thing is, I think of sports like a balloon. Everybody knows the more life force, the more breath you put into that balloon, the bigger it gets, but also the more of your air it takes. But the other side of that is the bigger it gets, after a while, the more susceptible it is to pop. And as you keep putting air in it, its capacity only can take so much before it pops. But sports don't warn you a lot of times. You're lucky if college, hey, it's going to end. There's no chance of going to the next level, so it's going to end. So you're preparing for that. The longer you play it, the more it consumes your life force and the more of it you have put into it. But we don't acknowledge a lot of the times the intangibles that it actually is developing in us, that the being part of the human in sports, it is building you to be a better person. It's building you to be able to be in a room full of alphas and find value. It's building you to take constructive criticism. It's building you to be able to communicate in a way in which you're not taking it personal. It's building you to be able to work with others that aren't necessarily the same as you, but have the same common goal. And it builds you to be able to take accountability, hold others accountable, and to be able to develop yourself in such a way that people can criticize you and watch you and videotape you perform, and you're not fazed. And so you don't necessarily think of that when the balloon pops and all those talents and all those skills you learn fall to the ground. A lot of those you can pick up and take with you to the next phase of your life, but we're so engulfed and we're so overwhelmed with the emotion of I lost it.
It's
My
over.
balloon popped. My balloon popped.
Yes.
We don't think about what it gave us and how it built us in that process. I mean, the Bible, it says, put me first and I'll give you your heart's desires. What we don't understand in that process is if your heart's in it, that's where you're the most apt to grow, because that's where you're the most fertile. You're the most pliable because your heart's in it. So now that your heart's open because of this one thing you love, you give it to the source. You give it to the one who can develop and build you the right way. And now he can use that to build you. If you don't do it in the right way, it consumes you and it drains you. And I was prepared to retire, but I wasn't prepared. I wasn't ready for the lifestyle alteration, for the changes, for the responsibility of setting your schedule and having to go work out just to go work out and stay healthy. Not because you got to get ready to dominate somebody across the line or get ready to compete. I enjoy working out, but I enjoy the camaraderie of working out with others, or the accountability of somebody relying on me to go work out, to be ready. Just to go work out, just to look fit, feel good. It's not really my forte. I mean, even now, I'm in decent shape. I'm above average shape. But because of what I was used to doing, I still think I'm out of shape. so,
Yeah, if you compare
yeah.
yourself at your age now to the middle of your NFL career, you're going to lose today every time.
Yeah.
You can't compare. I want to share a couple thoughts that popped to my mind about just the tremendous lessons and benefits you get from football.
Yes.
You know, very few times in life do you get hit as hard as you do in football, and you got to get back up.
And the expectation is for you to get back
The
up.
expectation is for you to get back up, and there's shame if you don't.
People
And then you
clap
got to,
when you go down, but not when you get back up usually.
yeah. And if you have sometimes you almost want to be hurt so you can have an excuse for why you couldn't get back up, because everybody thinks you're a wussy. I think another aspect of football that is very valuable for young men is it's hard. It's hot. The pads are uncomfortable, especially the first week of training camp. And in a culture now in our country where we give participation trophies and everybody's politically correct, but everybody's bank account looks differently. Some people get promoted in their business, some don't. It's a meritocracy in the real world, but we're trying to make sports participation. Well, football is meritocracy. Coaches want to win. They won't play the best players. They're going to play the players they can trust. And I think the other aspect of football that is prevalent in all team sports, it's not always just about you. You know, I mean, we're doing this together. So maybe it's not about your highlight tape. Maybe it's not about, your selfishness and your stats. Maybe it's about us instead of being about me or about you. And for organizations to be successful, doesn't matter what it is, it's got to be about us, not about you or me. So,
I
okay,
totally agree.
give our listeners, in your mind, what is the biggest distinction between the NFL and college football? What's the first thing that pops in your mind?
Man, the risk. Let me see. Let me see. First thing that pops in my mind. The first thing that pops in my mind is this concept called the Johari window. But that takes a little explanation. But I'll say, um, ownership. And the reason why I say that is you can't blame anyone else in the NFL for your circumstances or for what you did or for what you didn't do. At that point, it is solely on you to maximize the resources you're given, to put yourself in position to be successful. It's 100% on you to keep yourself out of trouble. It's 100% on you to be on time. 100%. Like the ownership you have to take over who you are is what sets people apart. Your ability to maximize your time, your ability to maximize who you are, your ability to have balance in your life so you can psychologically and mentally be present, your ability to take care of things off the field. So for me, it's ownership. It's you realizing that you are the owner, you are the captain, you are the master of your ship and of your soul, and literally, it's you. And earlier you said something about compete, and not one of our things we always talked about was always compete, never compare. Another thing was always that it was in our locker room at the Chargers. It said, commitment is doing what you said you would do long after the mood you set it in has left you. And anything in your life that has priority or that you're responsible for, you can put it in place of the word commitment. Marriage is doing what I said I'd do long after the mood I set it in. Being a father is doing what I do long after the mood I set it in. So in those moments of owner, like of anything in your life, the NFL is ownership. And the ones that are highly successful in college, especially today with NIL and the transfer portal, is ownership. The less time you spend blaming someone else is more time spent building yourself and developing and understanding that the circumstances you're in is because of you. What was your role in it? How can you Make sure it doesn't happen again. Because you can make 100 mistakes in the NFL. Seriously. They just can't be the same 100 mistakes. You have to be able to keep growing.
Right.
And a coach will say that to you too. I don't mind if you make mistakes, but I just cannot have you making the same one over and over again. And so for me, that's one of the biggest work. And the Johari window is this window pane. So if I split my screen like this portion up here is the arena, something that everybody knows about you, that everybody can see. You know about you, and everybody else knows about you. And then the opposites, the top other side is your blind spots, things that other people can see about you that you can't see about yourself. Then the bottom part of the window pane, or one part, is the facade, things you know about yourself but don't allow others to see about you. And then the other corner is the unknown. And those are things you don't know and things others don't know about you. But that unknown portion of the window gets bigger with the more facade and the more blind spots you have in your life. So the more you put in the arena, the more ownership you have over your story, the more ownership you have over your life, the more ownership you have over over your reactions to the way in which the opportunities and the circumstances happen in your life. The more you aren't afraid or shameful about who you are, that's the arena. Because the eye in the sky doesn't lie, right? But the more you put in that arena, the smaller those blind spots and that facade is. But the only way to do that is to allow accountability. You have blind spots because you don't allow feedback and accountability or constructive criticism. And you have facades because of shame. You have to have people in your life who really can trust you and continue to grow. So the more you allow those two things, vulnerability and accountability in your life, the bigger that arena gets. But it takes ownership. And that's how you reach your full potential. That's how you minimize the unknown, untapped talent and potential you have in your life. And to me, that's why ownership is the first thing I think that separates college from the NFL. Is in college, everybody around you is there to see you succeed. Their job is to see you succeed. There are dozens of people just to see you succeed. And in the NFL, there's dozens and dozens around you who also are trying to succeed.
The biggest difference on a day-to-day basis is, you have a dispute with a position coach in college. Oh, hey, you might get reprimanded. Maybe you miss some reps the next day. And then NFL, if you're expendable, they'll send you home that night.
Only if the playbook is not used on your behalf. If you have a dispute with a position coach and it's about a play, they refer to the playbook. So that was one thing I did enjoy about the NFL, is that no matter what, and about sports, I'll say this about sports as a whole, not just about the NFL, college, different football players are viewed as, this goes back to what we were talking about, what football gives us to, as lazy or as jocks, right? I think a lot of that is because in football, and especially in sports, but particularly in football, there's no gray area. You either did it or you didn't do it. Anything that's in question is up for debate and a review to give a definitive answer. And so there is no in between. Where in life, in the corporate America, there's a lot of gray. In politics, there's a lot of gray. Who has the last say so? Who has a higher rank? Who has the bigger influence? There's a lot of gray. And in sports, there's not much gray. And so for me, when I think about even a coach, I can go to a coach and have a dispute if they made a call and they said I was wrong, but the playbook says exactly what I did on film.
Yeah.
And so if that coach failed to communicate or failed to not just communicate, but to correct it on the playbook, because now plays are digital. So if you had a conversation with the first team and failed to share it with the second team, a little adjustment, you can't hold the second team accountable for what you didn't communicate to them.
And so if the player knows the playbook better than the coach, that's not on the player.
Not on the player at all. And that's one thing I respected about the NFL is that if we're in a room and I say, well, coach, that's what the playbook said. Now, there's a few times that 99% of the room was like, nah, coach said on this day, we're just at this. Different story. I'd have shut my mouth and be like, yeah, you're right. But in today's generation with the digital copies, that is going to be edited before that practice or for that day is over and added in there. And I was somebody that my teammates could always rely on when it came to doing our pregame tests. I knew the playbook left and right. Even though I wasn't always the second down safety. I was a lot of times a third down safety and special teams captain and come on and dominate people and amazing plays on third down. I had to tackle beast mode on third and short to win the game in Seattle, which is the hottest game of my career ever played in. It was like 120 degrees in San Diego on grass. I couldn't imagine it. I'm just glad they were from Seattle, which is not as hot as at all. So yeah. But knowing exactly and being confident in who you are, it is a big difference. In college, that coach will dog cuss you if you're wrong, and if he thinks you're wrong and tell you to shut up and won't give you an ounce to speak. Stop talking. Don't talk back. Be quiet. We're in the NFL. You guys may only be 5 years apart in age, and these are two peers that are arguing, especially today's age. There's a lot of young coaches right now, and I think that's why you see a lot of good college coaches not have success in the NFL. Is because of the control of the trust. Like, it demands a higher level of trust in the NFL because now this is a grown man, a peer that you're talking to, that you have to trust to do their job. And you can't force him to do it your way, but you have to amplify him to do it the way in which best suits him. Where in college, you're going to do it this way and this way alone. Where in the NFL, you may give them the tools and let them make the call on which tool they think is best for that play.
Darrell, you have 4 kids. How many boys? How many girls?
2 and 2.
2 and 2. What's your son's names? Or son's ages, I'm sorry.
They are the bookends. I have bookend boys. Thank God I boxed my girls in. So my oldest is 11. My youngest is 5.
Okay. So what are you going to do with respect to sports? And all 4 of your kids may play sports, but I doubt that your daughters are going to play tackle football. So that's why I'm wanting to know about your boys. So what are you doing with your 11-year-old that because of what you've learned from playing college football, playing in the NFL, being a part of a college football program now as a football relations man, you have a much different perspective today. What are the life lessons you want your son to learn? What is the experiences you want him to learn? Or do you not even want him to play?
He is playing a sport every season of the year, and it's different. He does play football, plays baseball, basketball, or the main 3, and he swings a heck of a golf club. And him being born in San Diego, that's a have to. There's too many golf courses out there. And I used to host a FCA golf tournament for out there, so he always had a golf club. He bats left and he catches. He plays every position in baseball. And basketball, he has had to carry the grunt of playing a post player because he's strong and he's a great rebounder. He was tall, which is the opposite of me at his age. I was tiny. He's 120 pounds right now. I was barely 90 pounds or 85 pounds. I was thinking, going into the 6th grade, I was like 87, going on like maybe 90. And I was like 4'11 and a half. He's 5'4". So his genetics is a little different than mine. But so we've played flag football up until this moment. And now that he's going into 6th grade, we're going to play tackle this year. And mainly because I believe that football is a sport about repetition and about understanding the game. In flag, you're able to attack the ball in the air. You're able to play above your head regardless of what age you are because there's no helmet involved. You're able to attack space. You're able to understand how to avoid contact, how to avoid people, and how to attack the hit under control. This is something you don't learn in tackle. In tackle, you learn to try to run through the hip. But because you're kids, it is against your processing for the most of the kids out there to run through somebody's hip. 90% of kids slow down before they get to the hip, and they try to drag them down. And then the other half are running around the field like this with a face mask in the air because their neck can't hold the helmet up. And if I can't teach a kid to hold his head up because of physics, because every time he puts his head down, his head drops. Every time he goes down because the helmet's too heavy, then I can't teach him to create good habits. And so for me, knowing how the game should be played, I didn't want equipment to slow down the process and development of a young player trying to understand how to play football at a high level. And these kids grow so much. And when they hit puberty, kids that are chunky, under 10, start stretching out. And now these kids that were forced to play line when they were under 10 years old are hitting puberty, and now they got to figure out how to play a skill position. Or in flag, you can snap the ball and still run a route. It's so for me, I enjoy teaching flag because it teaches them to attack the ball in there. It teaches them to run. It teaches them how to use the whole joystick. I say the whole joystick because like we got NCAA just came out with a new game finally after about a decade and a half. If my son been as big as he is, played tackle 3 years ago, he would have found the truck stick button, and I'm not sure if he would have found the circle, how to spin, or found the R2 or the L2, how to avoid contact, and or trusted his speed to outrun somebody on the edge. Where now him going into tackle now, he knows how to use those other moves. He knows he can outrun. He knows he can attack a ball in the air. Which if I put him in tackle too early, he wouldn't be confident in jumping and catching the ball above his head because the shoulder pads would have hindered him for 2 or 3 years before he was able to do it. Now it's habit. Catching the ball with his hands is habit. I think you see evidence in the NFL today of kids that play tackle at a young age without playing flag. You see a lot of body catchers, players making millions of dollars who won't catch the ball out in front of their bodies.
Well, interestingly, Darrell, I've got 2 boys that play pro football. One's in the NFL with the Titans in training camp right now, going into his 3rd season. And I've got a son that plays quarterback in Germany. And I had both these guys play flag for multiple years for some of the same reasons you're talking about. Yeah. And then what happened was once they got into tackle, I had them play multiple positions because I wanted them to learn how to block. Not one of my kids is a quarterback. The other one's kind of a running back receiver type guy that he's a linebacker now with the Titans. But the bottom line is he played offensive line. Yeah. Because I wanted him to play work because the football IQ goes through the charts, goes through the rough when you can see the game from a different perspective. I work with coaches and I always ask them, hey, what position did you play? They all see the game through the position they played. Yes. Okay. So if you played center, that's how you see the game. If you played tight end, that's how you see the game. That's why a lot of quarterback coaches and quarterback coordinators and head coaches play quarterback because they're not just thinking about what do I got to do. I got to make sure 10 other guys are lined up. Yep. And I got to know what everybody's doing. Where if you're playing tight end, maybe you got to know where another receiver's doing so you don't, crowd his space. But you're really thinking about you. Yeah. And
even me as a safety, I can look at the offense and understand what defense has to be there to help minimize its ability to be successful, or how to get rid of a gap or a hole in the defense based on what they're trying to run. So as a defensive coordinator, my first couple of years in flag, it was easy to play. It was easy and it wasn't stressful to be a defensive coordinator. And they had no idea what defense they were in. It was a match zone concept, and I taught them how to play catch technique. Didn't call it catch technique. I called it this is where you stand, and you're in a zone, and you're playing off. It was off man. That's all it was. And I had them passing it off, and instead of saying stay square, I said belly button to the ball because they all thought it was funny, and I knew they wouldn't forget it. If your belly button's pointing at the ball, then you're square because your belly button doesn't move without your hip. So, and the reality of that is, how do I create it to where it's easy and helps them process it without overthinking? And we actually adjusted to the formations, but because I broke it down to them in a way in which they could comprehend it, they didn't think twice about it. And they had no idea what the defense was called. They just knew that was their role. Because I didn't want to tell them, hey, you're a linebacker, because there's no line in flag football. You are a low middle defender. That is what you're doing. Because I don't want you going to a coach when you play tackle and say, oh, I played linebacker. I played middle linebacker. You have no idea what you're committing to when you say that. So I'm teaching you how to do a specific technique as a low middle defender, and how to pursue the hip, how to attack the hip, how to run through the hip. I was able to teach all these things, but when I went to offensive coordinator, because my other coaches were more comfortable calling defense, it was hard. I was like, dang. I realized I was a NFL safety, right? Defensive player, and you want to call defense. Like, it was easy to say something like that, but the other side was, that's what my coaches are most comfortable with. As a captain, going through the ranks at NFL level and at the college level, and in Little League or high school, I understood how to meet the needs and elevate the people around me. So I knew, like, okay, when I went to sit down to make my offense, I made it really simple. I wanted to emphasize teaching the quarterback how to go through his progressions and how to just spread the ball out. Because the biggest strength is weapons, being able to put the ball where the person's wide open. And teaching your kids to catch the ball the right way and trust each other. And so what happens is I start attacking defenses from a defensive perspective. All right, what can overwhelm this zone? All right, what can overwhelm this zone? So force this coach to have to truly coach his defense to collapse the zone. And they're 8. You ain't teaching the kid to collapse the zone at 8. So I was just overwhelming zones. And we would run the same play like 5 times in a row, and it would be successful because just because I say same play, and we're going to no huddle and do the same play, I'm not telling my quarterback to give it to the same person or to throw it to the same person. I'm telling him to read the defense. And I taught him how to read the defense. And he's going to find and I trusted him to find the open person. And it worked. And it built their confidence to trust that, hey, it doesn't matter what defense they're in. If I know where my guys are going and my eyes can move the defense, I can get the guy I need to get open. And it helped our quarterbacks tremendously. But like you said, you see it from your point of view. I had to see it from a defensive point of view, and what makes a defense vulnerable. Oh, it's a quarterback that is willing to throw it to whoever's open. And at this age, you usually get kids who want to throw it to their favorite receiver or throw it to what they think their best player is. I do not let my own son or my kids on my team even talk about who they think the best player on our team is. Because the best player on our team needs to be the person who's getting the ball right now. Because I need y'all to be confident in that person, and that person be confident that he deserves it and he should have the ball.
Well, I coached high school football and youth football, and I'm obviously been in football for 30-some years, but the secret weapon for an offense is always to take what the defense gives you. They can't cover everything. They've got 8 guys in the box. Something's open in the passing game. They got a light box, run it up the gut and make them pay for it. So it's like,
no doubt,
it's not real tough. It's just
and that's exactly what made Tom Brady so hard. And that's why he was the most difficult quarterback. Even to this day, people ask me, who's the most difficult quarterback to face? And I always be like, Tom, because he didn't allow his ego to make him throw the ball where he didn't need to throw it. He was okay with throwing a fade route to a receiver he know wasn't open, but to a DB he know was being a little bit too handsy. And so he'll do that one-step drop, and now it's a PI, and he's okay with it. That's a first down. He's not thinking like, oh, I haven't threw the ball deep today. He's one of the few quarterbacks I can think of consistently that would have 5 passing touchdowns in less than 200 yards passing. That's crazy. He would do it multiple times throughout his career.
He had Gronk, and he had some slot receivers. But to my recollection, Randy Moss was the only true number 1 receiver he ever had. And he never won a Super Bowl with him. So it's like he didn't have the best receiving core. So when you don't have, Joe's not better than their Joe, you throw the guy that's open.
Your understanding has to be better.
Yeah.
Yeah, your execution. And so in that sense, the trust you have to develop within your team and within not just the system, but the execution of the system you have. And your ability to rely on each other allows you to anticipate where your guys are going to be. So now I can manipulate where the defense thinks I'm looking and know exactly where I got to go to throw it once I get that defender off the line or off the spot I know you got to get to. And I think it goes into just the whole concept of ownership and understanding who you are, what you're capable of, and how to empower people around you is the next phase, and how you can amplify their ability to be successful as well.
Amen. Darrell, I want to thank you for being on Pro Mindset today. We could talk for a couple hours, dude. We could.
Well, I blocked off what you said, hour and a half. So.
Oh my God, you blocked off an hour and a half? Okay. Well, I've I don't know if anybody will listen to an hour and a half of you and me.
No, but you can edit it. No, I'm just playing.
I know. Well, hey, I want to go back to my book, Pro Mindset, is out. You can find it. You can find it. And if you want to learn more about how pros think and the guys that made it and what made them different from the guys that didn't make it, the elite, the 1 in 100. It's tough to make it to the league. And once you get to the league, it's tough to be an all-star. But the guys that truly are, they have a special mindset, and they've rewritten their stories, they've elevated their standards, and they know how to show up to be their best when it's go time, show time, and when they're on stage. So check out Pro Mindset, the book on craigdoman.com. Thank you very much for listening to Pro Mindset today. And it was awesome to have Darrell Stuckey from the University of Kansas as the guest.
Thanks for having me, Craig. I appreciate it. It was an honor and a privilege. And I look forward to reading it myself.
Hey, it's Craig Doman, the host of Pro Mindset Podcast. I want to thank you for listening or watching today's show. And you can catch us every week on the normal social media platforms like YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and all the listening podcast platforms. I hope you enjoyed today's show. And more importantly, I hope you gained a pro mindset insight. Please be sure to rate and review Pro Mindset Podcast. And I look forward to catching up with you on our next show.